If there is one thing we know Donald Trump enjoys, that's breaking the law. No one loves breaking the law like Donald Trump. And the latest example of that came as Donald Trump desperately tried to save his, thank God, failing immigration policy. Donald Trump has not had the success that he hoped for with his mass deportation, so he thought he would take it another step further, invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to carry out this goal, and that immediately was hit with a lawsuit striking it down. Trump is furious. We are going to get into all of it, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can get into what exactly happened with this strike down of Donald Trump's latest action, I want to hear some context on what Donald Trump invoked from Rachel Maddow right here.
The legal grounds for interning Japanese Americans in World War II was something called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. That was only the third time it had ever been used in American history. It had been used in the War of 1812, it had been used in World War I, and it had been used for Japanese internment in World War II. Last night, we started to see headlines like this one at the Wall Street Journal, quote, Trump to invoke seldom used wartime law from 1798. Or this one from CBS News. Professor says Trump's plan to invoke Alien Enemies Act of 1798 sidesteps immigration laws. And then inevitably, because of the history of that law, we started to see last night headlines like this. From the ABC affiliate in San Diego, in this case, Japanese Americans react to Trump's plan to invoke Alien Enemies Act. And then this morning, we got the news that Senator Alan Simpson of Wyoming died today in Cody, Wyoming, where he was from. He was 93 years old. President Donald Trump gave a speech today at the U.S. Justice Department, which itself is a rare thing for a president to do. In that speech, he was expected. White House sources had made clear to lots of reporters that President Trump was expected to announce at that speech that he is going to invoke the Japanese internment law. He is going to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which, again, has only ever been used 3 times before in our country and always in wartime. And the last time we used it, men like Norm Mineta and Alan Simpson and fricking Ronald Reagan ended up moving the nation to apologize for it, to call it a stain on our national honor, and not only to formally apologize, but to pay reparations for what we have done. Trump wants to do it again, according to multiple White House sources in speaking with multiple reporters at multiple news agencies. That said, Trump didn't announce it at the Justice Department at his speech today. And he might have meant to, who knows? His speech went completely off the rails. He started giving what sounded like orders to Justice Department officials in the room that they should go after a government watchdog group crew that has brought lawsuits against his administration. The Justice Department should act against them somehow and for something. He started to say that the Justice Department should go after CNN and should go after MSNBC and should go after a whole big list of people he sees as his enemies. So his speech, who knows how much of that was written and how much of it was just him being moved in the moment. He got so wound up about telling the Justice Department individually to go after his enemies today that maybe he forgot the part about let's rerun Japanese internment. But presumably that's coming. I'm assuming that it'll come in some midnight or 4 a.m. announcement or some misspelled all capital letters Truth Social post or something.
That is just incredibly scary stuff. I feel like too often we hear that you have to learn from history or you're bound to repeat it. But seriously, come on. Really? These are the steps that he wants to take. Now, again, I've said this in previous videos. I feel myself needing to repeat it. It is important we recognize so many of the steps Donald Trump tries to take are not just to satisfy the individual goals and individual outcomes of whatever situation. This is not about immigration. This is about Donald Trump consolidating as much power as possible into his hands in the presidency. That's what the Supreme Court did for months ago. Says he's got a complete immunity. That's what he's trying to do right here. But luckily, that was struck down, and we're going to take a look at how. Federal judge blocks Trump's plan to target alien enemies for deportation. In his latest move to clamp down on illegal immigration and immigration more broadly, Donald Trump has filed a presidential action invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a seldom used law that gives the president authority to detain or deport nationals of any enemy nation during wartime. It's only the fourth time in American history a president has used this act, and the first time since World War II. The directive targets members of the Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan prison gang, and authorizes expedited removal of all Venezuelan citizens 14 and older deemed to be members of the organization who are not U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. According to the presidential action, those people are liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg issued an order hours after Trump invoked the wartime power, stopping the administration from using it to deport anyone, adding that the administration should turn planes already in the air around. Earlier in the day, a lawsuit brought by the American Civil Liberties Union and Democracy Forward, Boasberg had blocked the administration from deporting 5 Venezuelan men for 14 days. Another hearing on the matter will take place on Friday. An executive action signed in January that designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization paved the way for the direct removal of its members from the U.S. territory under the Alien Enemies Act, declaring they, along with MS-13, a gang with origins in El Salvador, not included in Saturday's action, present an unusual and extraordinary threat to our nation's security, foreign policy, and economy. The expedited removal process allowed under the act means that those subject to the president's declaration would not go through the normal immigration court processes or be able to claim asylum. Advocates fear that invoking the act would also open the door for targeting deportations of other individuals regardless of their status or criminal records. There's nothing in the law itself that would require it to be limited to undocumented individuals or individuals who have committed crimes, said Catherine Yon-Ebert, counsel on the Liberty and National Security team at the center-left Brennan Center for Justice. It's not about legal status, consistent with the idea that it's a wartime authority, not an immigration authority. It is also unclear how the inclusion of minors in the president's action Saturday will play into legal challenges. Again, this is not about the specific action. It's about what Donald Trump is more broadly trying to accomplish, which is allowing himself to play dictator, to be a God king, and to intimidate. Ultimately, if Donald Trump has the power to do whatever he wants, maybe he won't be using it as much as one would think, and maybe that's just wishful thinking for me. He probably will use and abuse all power that he has. But more than anything, Donald Trump wants to intimidate. That's the greatest power of all. Getting people to bend the knee, getting people to pre-capitulate, getting people to be afraid of him. And that's what we see with so many of the legal actions that Donald Trump is taking now to impose real restrictions on speech and protest and any demonstration against his government. He is weaponizing the DOJ and using lawfare in the same way that he accused the Biden administration wrongfully in a lie of doing. And it's not just this. There is so much corruption happening within Donald Trump's Justice Department that Jamie Raskin so perfectly broke down right here.
It's fascinating that the president used the word BS to describe the case against him, which resulted in dozens of criminal convictions, because that was the same word that his own Attorney General, William Barr, used to describe his deranged claim that he had won the 2020 presidential election when Joe Biden beat him by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. That was the word that Attorney General Barr, even one of his greatest defenders, used to describe his delusional claims about how there was election fraud and election irregularities. No other president in American history has stood at the Department of Justice to proclaim an agenda of criminal prosecution and retaliation against his political foes. This thoroughly partisan and delusional diatribe was a staggering violation of the traditional boundary between independent criminal law enforcement and presidential political power. The speak we just witnessed is a desecration of the essential values of the storied department in every way. It's an insult to the thousands of professional lawyers who go to work at the Department of Justice every day to enforce the rule of law, not the personal vendettas and partisan games of a politician. President Grant and Congress created the Department of Justice in 1870, 5 years after the Civil War, in the throes of Reconstruction. It was an exercise of Congress's powers under Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, which had just been added to the Constitution 2 years before. The purpose of the department was to protect the newly freed African American population in the South against escalating violence by the Ku Klux Klan and unrepentant secessionists. Congress wanted to protect the voting rights of the emancipated population against racial disenfranchisement schemes. Now, the Department of Justice, which first set out to defend the rule of law against white supremacy and vigilante violence, has become a department of injustice, cruelty, favoritism, and unfairness. One of Trump's first acts was to try to nullify the very first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which establishes that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen of the United States. And they tried to destroy that, leading to at least 4 federal courts invalidating this executive order: an Obama judge, a Biden judge, a Reagan judge, and even a Trump judge. And the Reagan judge said it was the easiest case he ever had to decide. You don't have to be a lawyer to know what's wrong with that executive order or any of the other ones. You just have to know how to read. And that judge was very clear about it. Now, until now, the basic concept of the rule of law in our history has been the idea that no one is above the law. There was, to be sure, law under King George, but it was a law that the monarch and the lords imposed on the rabble, the peasants and the poor, but it never applied to them. It never applied to themselves. In the 18th century, the American Revolution overthrew the kings, the lords, and the feudal barons to establish a nation where we would have a nation where all would be equal under the law. As Tom Paine put it, in the monarchies, the king is law, but in the democracies, the law is king.
This is really scary stuff, but it's to be expected. What is unexpected is that there are so many in our party, unfortunately, elected Democrats, who don't seem ready to meet the moment. Of course, Jamie Raskin is not one of them. Neither is Bernie Sanders or AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Chris Murphy. These are people who are fighting right now. We need more fighters. Now is the time for people to step up and use their voices. We're certainly going to be on this show just by watching these videos and helping fight back. You are as well, and I thank you for that. If you want to support the work that we're doing here, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.